Hey guys, Black Panther Wakanda Forever has arrived, so let's conversationalize. Hey guys, so overall, my thoughts concerning Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I really don't want to have to say this to you guys, but I am disappointed that this film was not as good as I wanted it to be. The first trailer, when it came out, it was awesome. It looked like, one of the older trailers they used to have for like Phase 1, 2, and 3. Like, it looked great. It looked like it had the right emotion, awesome action. It just looked like it had all those things. And then I see the movie, and it definitely has awesome action sequences. That's for sure. When the action sequences happen, they are awesome. So, points there. But, overall story, I felt, was not executed as well as it could have been. Particularly, before going into this film, one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind was how would they handle Chadwick Boseman's death in this movie, and in the context of the movie, how would they handle T'Challa's death? How would they go about that? And it was a lot of, theories going around, and people assumed that they might just do something where they say he had an illness and passed, and that affects the whole film. Which is true to some extent. He does have an illness. Like the beginning of the movie, but spoilers, if I haven't already said that, but spoilers for Wakanda Forever for sure. But at the beginning of the movie, Shuri is trying to create a synthetic version of the Black Panther herb that gave the kings of Wakanda the Black Panther powers established in the previous movie. She's trying to create a synthetic version of that to save T'Challa's life from this illness that he has, which they never say what illness it was. I feel like there could have been something cool there, like they could have done something more. I think that's actually my criticism overall with how they handled Chadwick Boseman's death in the movie. I think there could have been more. I feel like they kind of rushed it, because they have the beginning scene where she's trying to make the herb, but it's not working, and then he dies. And then Queen Ramonda comes to her, and she's like, your brother has joined the ancestors. So, and then they have the funeral. And I just feel like they rushed it. And I feel like, honestly, the mourning of T'Challa was handled better in the first Black Panther movie, when we all thought he may have died, but he didn't. When we all thought that Killmonger might have killed him, and when Queen and Shuri thought that. I feel like the mourning of his death might have been done better then than it was in this film when the actual actor died, which is bad. Like, I expected more. I expected T'Challa's death to have much more of an impact on the movie than it actually did. Obviously, it is kind of a through line of like, yes, we know this has happened and it does affect the characters, but it doesn't seem to affect them in the most powerful way. Like, I really think that they could have written a better version of this story where, yes, Chadwick's death / T'Challa's death really does affect every choice that is made in the movie, and that's not really the case because they mourn for T'Challa's passing, but it has a lot to do with the Queen, has a lot to do with, it does have a lot to do with Shuri's, how she's dealing with T'Challa's death. That is definitely a major through line, but again, I think there just could have been more that they could have done there. And also, the movie, I said this in my initial reaction review, is the movie doesn't have that same cool feel that the first Black Panther movie had. Because the first Black Panther movie, like I said in my review of that movie, it has this feeling that's distinct to that movie. And I would have loved if that feeling carried onward to the sequel, but it doesn't. Like, you get the music, and the music is good, but I actually felt like the choice of music for the specific scene that they were doing in this movie was off. I don't think they chose the right music for certain scenes. Like, there's one scene where I think it's Queen Ramonda when she's talking to Shuri, and like the first time they have a conversation with each other, and after T'Challa has passed, so the year later that happens, because it is a time span. Like T'Challa dies, and then the actual movie takes place a year later. So it's the first conversation that Queen Ramonda and Shuri have, and like there's this music in the background that's kind of fast, and you can tell like it's the music that Shuri plays in her lab. But I feel like that was kind of messing with me during the scene. Like it was meant to be an emotional and deep scene, so you expect like emotional and deep kind of music, but it really like they didn't have that. They just kind of had the song playing in the background, which you could audibly hear enough, and so kind of messed with me a little bit. And there were other kind of things like that too, in other areas of the movie where I was like, I don't know if this music exactly lines up with what I'm supposed to be feeling right now, and so it did kind of mess me up on that point. I guess you could say the main conflict of the film is Shuri learning how to accept T'Challa's passing. But they kind of, like, in the middle act, because this is a long movie, this is almost a 3-hour movie, and it did feel long enough, but in the middle act, they kind of, I don't know, she ends up getting kidnapped by Namor and being so intrigued with the underwater world that he rules, and seems to be on Namor's page with a few things, but obviously she doesn't want to wage war on the entire Earth. And so I feel like it wasn't as focused as it could have been. Like they maybe should have had Shuri have more scenes of like, man, my brother's gone. I could be going nuts. I could be talking nonsense, but that's what I was feeling like with watching the movie. Also, like there's a line earlier in the movie where when she's talking to her mom and she's like, I feel like the more I think about T'Challa's death and the fact that he died, I just want to destroy the whole world. And Namor calls back to that later. And I didn't understand, like she's like, oh, like I might burn the world or something. Like I didn't really understand that line because I don't think the world really had anything to do with T'Challa's death. Like maybe it is one of those things where you're just trying to, you have such anger and sadness inside of you and you just want to take it out on the world. Maybe that's what she meant. But the way Namor calls back to it when he actually does want to destroy the world seems like she had a genuine motivation to make the world pay. I didn't understand, because again, it just seems like it would be really weird if she thought that was the world's fault because he had an illness. I don't put those two things together. Speaking of Namor and all of this, Killmonger's definitely a better villain. I think Killmonger definitely, of the two Black Panther movies, I think Killmonger definitely wins the villain award. Because the first introduction of Namor in the movie, like, it was a lot creepier than I thought it was going to be. Like, I thought it would be, okay, the Atlanteans are mad at the surface dwellers, and yada, yada, yada. We've seen that. I've seen that in the cartoons. I've seen that in the, it's similar to Aquaman. I thought they would do it at least something sort of along those lines. Obviously not a carbon copy, but sort of along those lines. But instead, they make them like this really... They definitely give them distinction, like this distinct race under the ocean, and they have this deep backstory of how they existed, which I thought the backstory itself was good. I thought it was fine. But I think it was actually the intro to the underwater people that Namor rules. I forget the exact name of what the people are called. But I think it was the introduction to them that kind of put a bad taste in my mouth as far as their part in the movie for the rest of the film. Like, they're the ones who attacked the boat that was featured in the trailer, and it's really creepy because like this guy and girl go down into the ocean to looking for vibranium, and then all of a sudden they come across this jellyfish, and then the girl notices that the other guy is not alive anymore, and then she screams, and then that's over. And what made it even creepier was that let me know in the comments if you guys thought the same thing I did, because I couldn't help but think, like, when I keep wanting to say Atlanteans, but they're not really Atlanteans in the movie, the underwater dwellers, I guess, when they were started to like sing their hypnotic songs to get the people to commit suicide, I was like, ugh, that's overdoing it. That's weird. I don't like that. but it felt like the mermaids in the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It felt like on Stranger Tides when the mermaids are trying to sing to the guys just so they can drag them down in the water and eat them. That's what that felt like. And so that's creepy enough in that movie. And so putting it in a Marvel movie with these underwater people I didn't think it fit. In fact, I think it might be a nitpick, but it's like, I feel like if that detail was removed, I might have been more on board with their people as a whole. But, that kind of maneuver doesn't put a great taste in my mouth as far as characters go. Namor's look is fine. I kind of wish he was clean shaven like he is in the comics. They changed the meaning of his name, which I didn't originally know the meaning of his name until I had looked it up when I was looking up something about the movie. The original meaning of his name from the comics of Namor's name is Avenging Sun. That's what Namor is supposed to mean in the comics. But in this movie, they change it, and now it means boy without love. I think the two different meanings are actually a reflection of what I think is wrong with the character in this movie and what I didn't like about this movie's interpretation of Namor. Is that, yes, Namor has been a villain in the comics. And I will say, I don't have an extensive knowledge of Namor as a character from the comics. But I feel like I know him well enough to know that they kind of made him a flat-out crazy murderer in this movie. Like, his motivations are understandable. Like, he's very territorial. That makes sense. But he goes to such great lengths to protect his people when they're not even in any direct threat. Like, nothing is actually directly threatening them. Like, yes, the Americans were looking for vibranium in his territory, but there's not actually anything that is going to directly harm him. He's just, like, really paranoid. And he's so paranoid to the point of he'll kill anybody if they get in his way of wanting to conquer the surface, because he is convinced that the surface will destroy them eventually. Even though they've remained in hiding for, like, hundreds of years. And clearly the rest of the world has absolutely no idea that they exist. And I don't even know if they still do. Based on, like, Everett Ross is the only one who has a remote idea of another... Well, I mean, I guess he did tell it to the other FBI guys, but they're the only ones who have a remote idea of another nation even being in play of that possibility, and they have no idea what the details of that nation are. So, I don't know. Also, I feel like, speaking of Everett Ross, I feel like he was kind of underutilized. Like, he helps Okoye and Shuri find Riri Williams / Ironheart, but that's kind of all he does. I mean, he tells Ramonda that the U.S. government will attack Wakanda because they believe Wakanda's been responsible for all the bad stuff taking place in the movie. But again, that's about it. Not as big of an effect. He doesn't get a whole lot to do. He doesn't have a lot of heroic moments, and like the heroic moments that he got in the first Black Panther movie were awesome. I guess it's not fully necessary that he gets more of those in this movie. It's just I feel like if you're gonna bring him back, you just do a little bit more with him. I will say some details about him are definitely revealed. Apparently, he was previously married to Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, I believe is her name. Forgive me if I butchered it. But apparently he was previously married to her, and now we realize that she is actually the director of, I assume, the CIA, maybe the FBI. I was a little confused there. When they said director, I was like, is she like the director of like the new S.H.I.E.L.D. or something? But S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore, I guess. So I guess, yeah, she's like the director of the FBI or the CIA or something like that. But that does show you what her position is, and it gives you a better perspective on what she's been doing in Phase 4, which is recruiting people. And obviously she's going to form the Thunderbolts. And she discovers that Everett Ross has been talking with Wakanda illegally and has been giving them information illegally, and so she has him arrested. And that's about all that plot kind of goes. I was hoping there'd be a post-credit scene like alluding to the Thunderbolts or something like that, since she was in the movie, since Dave Fontaine was in the movie. But I guess that there wasn't. There was only one mid-credit scene, I guess. It's a mid-credit scene. And it's a great mid-credit scene. It's just, there was really nothing else that kind of happened with that plotline. But yeah, Namor they made I think they over-villainized him. I was hoping one of the plot lines of the movie would be like Atuma, because Atuma is actually a really big villain from the comics. He matters a lot more than he does in this movie. Like, he's evil. He's like an evil, intimidating dictator who wants to conquer Atlantis and drown the entire world, and it's definitely grand to scale. I think maybe a better plot line for this movie would have been like Atuma manipulates Namor into attacking Wakanda, and like maybe lies to him, but then Atuma is obviously just doing that for his own gain, and so he can, drown the entire surface world, and Namor ends up teaming up with Wakanda to stop him. I feel like that could have been cooler instead of making Namor like this kind of unhinged, pretty crazy bad guy who he seems to not have that many problems with killing people. I mean, yes, he's definitely on edge in the comics, but I don't know if he's that on edge. I mean, he flat out killed the Queen of Wakanda. He's essentially the Zemo in this situation. He's just kind of the Zemo in this movie. Like, Zemo killed the king of Wakanda, T'Chaka, and now Namor has killed Queen Ramonda. I don't like that. I feel like that's like, okay, now we're making Namor really bad, and I feel like if we're gonna do more stuff with him in the future of him maybe becoming a good guy, that's a lot that has to be redeemed. And even like the last scene he has in the movie is a little like, is he redeemed? Is he still just kind of looking out for himself? Like, I don't know if I was reading that scene right or not, but I'm not sure. Also, Queen Ramonda strips Okoye of her mantle as general, and she is no longer a part of the Dora Milaje because Okoye failed to protect Shuri from the underwater dwellers. I thought that was kind of harsh. Queen Ramonda gives her reasoning, like partially because Okoye also stuck with Killmonger, sort of, in the first Black Panther movie. So I could understand her reasoning, but it was like really harsh. Like, it's not like Okoye didn't try to protect Shuri; she definitely did. So not really sure how I felt about that one. That felt a little forced, because it was like that's harsh. Like, stripping her from her mantle is pretty harsh. Although M'Baku does have a hilarious line later where he talks about how Nakia helped rescue Shuri from the underwater dwellers, and he's like, well, maybe she'll get rewarded with eternal banishment. I thought that was hilarious. I thought that was a hilarious M'Baku line. Speaking of M'Baku, it looks like he's going to rule Wakanda. He decided to take up the challenge that T'Challa took twice in the last Black Panther movie, and so now he might rule Wakanda. So we'll see how that plays out. I do think that's very interesting, and it is kind of a cool story arc for M'Baku, that he would, start out as gruff and not very nice toward T'Challa or the rest of Wakanda, but end up ruling them. I'm like, that's a cool arc, like, because he's a good dude. He still remains a good dude in this movie, which I enjoyed. But I think one of the things that also made me not feel the movie the way I wanted to, not like the movie the way I wanted to, is just the general fact that Chadwick Boseman's not T'Challa. Like, T'Challa's not here. Like, I think it really was only until I watched this movie that I realized, wow, Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa is an integral part to this universe and the nation of Wakanda and the stories that have to do with Wakanda. Like, he's integral. Because it's Chadwick's charisma leading everyone. Because he had a charisma. Like I said, his own specific charisma, and you could tell that he like led all the other actors in the first movie. And it's really only until I watched this movie that I realized that was the case. It's like, you watch the first Black Panther movie and you love all the characters, but now that I've seen a Black Panther movie without T'Challa, without Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, I'm like, it's just not the same. Like, Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa was great, and you can tell he led everyone, but I just don't think there's a central character in this movie that leads the rest of the cast and is a good center for all the other side characters to revolve around, like T'Challa was, like Chadwick Boseman was as T'Challa for the first movie. So I think, that just proves how awesome Chadwick was, but I think that's one of the reasons I just wasn't feeling this movie as much. But I was scared there for a minute because Shuri's arc seemed to want to go the way of the take vengeance out on your enemies and just embrace your hatred. But, they fix it, and she has mercy on Namor when she has the opportunity to kill him. Even though he killed the Queen, she still has mercy on him. And so I did think that was good. I'm glad that they gave her that moment of being merciful. It's kind of like the Batman kind of moment where, I'm not going to choose to kill you. I'm not going to choose to give in to my hatred for this person. The scene where she ended up talking to Killmonger in the ancestral plane after she took the synthetic herb. I thought that was very interesting. I didn't really know exactly what was going on with that. It didn't fully make sense that he appeared at first, but I guess the more I've thought about it, the more I realized that it's kind of established in that movie that she's not really big on the traditions, which is kind of hinted at in the first film. Like, she's not big on the traditions of Wakanda and their kind of religion and their religious beliefs about what happens to people after they die. She's not really big on that. And since Killmonger wasn't either, I guess it makes sense that he would be the one to appear, since she's still in that mindset of not believing in that kind of stuff. And since he didn't either, and he was kind of the only other relative in her life who didn't, even though she only met him for like 2 seconds and he was trying to kill her, I guess it makes sense that he appeared. And his whole temptation is like, I did think it was a good reveal. I thought it was very interesting that they brought Michael B. Jordan back. I thought it was they revealed it well. Like, her walking around the throne. We're fully expecting to see Ramonda, and it's just like, oh, Killmonger. I thought they may have tried to CGI recreate Chadwick Boseman. I thought that they were going to do that at certain points in the movie, but it was Killmonger. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So yeah, he's kind of like the devil on her shoulder. Like, you can either be noble like her brother, or do things my way that actually gets things done, which is killing everybody. But she chooses to be noble, like her brother, and she chooses not to kill everyone, and I appreciate that. Also, there is no Doctor Doom in this movie. That was a heavy rumor that Doctor Doom's first appearance in the MCU would be this film, but he does not show up in a post-credit scene nor in the actual movie. So I was disappointed, but I was kind of more prepared for it based on some of the comments that the director Ryan Coogler had stated beforehand, before the movie came out. So I was kind of prepared for it, but I was still sad because I felt like that could have been a really cool way to introduce him. Like, instead of introducing him in a Fantastic Four movie, which is where you would expect him to be introduced, you introduce him in this movie because he's like the villain of everyone in the comics, not just the Fantastic Four. And him, one of his plot lines being trying to steal vibranium, which he also has tried to do many times in the comics, would have been awesome. And he could have manipulated Namor. That's also what I was hoping, is that maybe he would be the one to manipulate Namor via Atuma. Like, he could contact Atuma and, offer him power or something like that. And so Atuma can whisper false things in Namor's ear to get him to attack Wakanda and the surface world. That could have been cool, but they didn't do that. The general motivation of Namor in this movie, like I said ago, like, it's understandable to a certain extent, but I don't think it was the best one they could have gone with. I think they could have gone with a more interesting one, instead of just him being so paranoid of his homeland that he's willing to kill a bunch of people to ensure, without a doubt, that they do not attack it. And like, he's willing to kill a teenage girl who accidentally gave the FBI a device to detect vibranium, which again does not directly harm Namor and his people. Which, I mean, again, if they take the vibranium, maybe I guess that if they take too much of it, since apparently Namor's people also live off vibranium, maybe that would be bad. But no, again, not really direct threat. And so I'm not a fan of his motivation, to be honest, of all the bad things he does in the movie. The last big thing to talk about in here is Nakia apparently left after Thanos' attack on Wakanda in Infinity War. And, throughout the movie you're kind of wondering, well, why did she leave? And she at first kind of explains it like, well, I assume she was talking about when T'Challa snapped at first. It's kind of sad because T'Challa's now at this point died 3 times in the MCU. He died in Black Panther when he was supposedly killed by Killmonger in the trial. He died in Infinity War when he got snapped, and now he's officially died in the MCU of some undisclosed illness. So Wakanda has definitely been through it as far as losing their king is concerned. And his family has definitely been through it as far as Queen Ramonda losing a son, Shuri losing a brother, and Nakia losing a boyfriend 3 times. Yikes. But she leaves for 6 years, and you don't exactly still know why. She at first kind of said something to the effect of she was just so mournful of T'Challa's passing that she didn't want to be around. She needed time to herself to cope with it. But the actual reason is revealed in the post-credit scene, which definitely was a zinger. Like, when I realized what was going on, I was like, which is actually as soon as Nakia was in the background, was like behind Shuri with a child, I realized, like, oh my gosh, that's Black Panther's son. And it is Black Panther's son. And that's actually really cool. That's a cool idea of him and Nakia having a son together that no one other than the Queen knew about. Because the Queen had said earlier in the movie, like, there's something about your brother that I need to tell you, when she was talking to Shuri. And I was really curious, like, okay, what is that? But they didn't reveal it in the movie, and I was like, dang it, are we even going to get to know? And that's obviously what it was, is in the post-credit scene, is the fact that T'Challa and Nakia had a son together. That's nuts, and he's definitely going to come into play later. And at first, Nakia says his name is, I don't want to say it because I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember exactly. But it's apparently like his name that he uses for the town. And his actual name is T'Challa. Because he says, I am Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Challa. Which is awesome because it's the same thing T'Challa said. It's like, I am Prince T'Challa, son of King T'Chaka. It's so cool. And I bet like they're going to make it to where he's going to be the future Black Panther now that Shuri has officially taken the mantle of Black Panther. But yes, T'Challa has a son. I give clapping to that. That's points. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that down the road. And now that Black Panther has a son, then that would mean that almost all of the Avengers now have children. Because Hulk has a son in Scar with the worst haircut imaginable. No, I'm never going to let that go. It's terrible. It doesn't deserve to be let go. Black Panther has his son, T'Challa Jr., I guess. Tony has a daughter, Morgan Stark. Hawkeye has 3 kids. Thor, I didn't see Love and Thunder, but I am aware that he kind of adopts Gor's daughter, Love. Her name is Love, and which is actually Chris Hemsworth's real daughter, so I think that's awesome. But he kind of has a kid now. And so far that leaves Captain America and Black Widow left to maybe they had kids at some point along the line. Because that actually happens in this animated movie called Avengers of Tomorrow. I forget the exact title. I think it's like Avengers of Tomorrow. I highly recommend it. It's awesome, but it's about a world where the Avengers, most of them were killed by Ultron, and Ultron has now taken over the planet. But the Avengers had children before then. Like Captain America married Black Widow, and Ant-Man married Wasp, but they had children before then, and the children have to fight Ultron. So it's the children of the Avengers, and I highly recommend it. It's really cool, especially with now like Black Panther having a son, because that's also one of the plot lines in Avengers of Tomorrow. So that is pretty cool to see. So that's my review of Wakanda Forever. I really wish I liked it more than I did. I had such high hopes that this would be one of the best superhero movies, or at least equal to the first one, Black Panther. But it just wasn't for me. Too many things that I was just too iffy on, and granted, I have not seen Moon Knight or Love and Thunder, and it's pretty much guaranteed that Love and Thunder and Miss Marvel are not the best superhero projects of the year, and I doubt Moon Knight is. So, of the ones I've seen, by far, I think Black Adam is the best. Which I love Black Adam. Don't get me wrong. It's just Black Adam was thoroughly entertaining, but it was kind of just entertainment. And I believe superhero movies can be deeper in that. They don't have to always be, but I believe they can be, and it's really cool when they are. That's proven by the Dark Knight trilogy and other superhero movies. Black Adam was kind of the, maybe not bare minimum, but close to, of like a good superhero movie. Like, this is the entertainment side of superheroes, and it did it phenomenally, and I still love it. And I still hold to everything I said in my Black Adam review, but it's sad when the bare minimum of the good parts of a superhero movie displayed in a good form, is the best superhero project of the year when you have so many superhero projects these days. I feel like that's a problem. We got to fix that. Marvel, DC, somebody's got to fix it. So that's my review for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. I'm hyperventilating. That's a wrap.